As a child, Elon was the youngest and smallest student in his class and was viciously bullied. During one incident, he was thrown down the stairs and kicked in the head by several students until his face was unrecognizable. Luckily, he became a billionaire since it took him decades of plastic surgeries to fix the damage caused to his face and nose. Elon has been quoted calling his father Errol a terrible human being who's done almost every evil thing imaginable. In 1998, Errol had 7 intruders break into his home and killed 3 of them before the rest ran off. He also has 2 kids with his stepdaughter, who's 42 years younger than him, and was only 4 years old when Errol married her mom. In the year 2000, Elon contracted one of the most lethal forms of malaria while on vacation in South Africa. At one point, he was only hours away from death and lost 45 pounds in total while taking 6 months to recover. He cites this near-death experience as a turning point of his life that gave him a renewed focus and determination to succeed. Michelle Philpott suffered traumatic brain injuries after 2 car accidents in the 1980s. A few years later, she was diagnosed with epilepsy, which led to a strange case of anterograde amnesia, meaning her brain is completely incapable of forming new memories. Each day, Michelle wakes up believing it's still 1994, and her husband has to constantly show her a photo album to convince her that they've been married for 26 years. Renowned Japanese actor Bando Mitsugoro VIII claimed to be immune to fugu chemo, naturally toxic pufferfish liver. He devoured 4 portions of it in a restaurant in Kyoto and died painfully after 8 hours of gradual paralysis and breathing issues. When Lawrence Anthony, known as the Elephant Whisperer, passed away, a herd of elephants traveled 12 miles to his house in South Africa to mourn him. Even though the elephants weren't alerted that he had passed, they stood around for 2 days as if they were mourning one of their own before eventually dispersing. In 2016, a man who'd been continuously stalking Miranda Cosgrove apparently plotted to murder her. For 3 days, the stalker had been burying various weapons in Cosgrove's backyard, including knives and a rope. One day, he spent hours pacing around the area and eventually shot at a woman who looked like the iCarly actress. The man then performed self-immolation before turning the gun on himself right in Cosgrove's yard. Miranda has stated that she still lives in the same house but refuses to stay there alone ever since that traumatic incident. Earlier this year, inmates at a Miami prison managed to birth a child without ever even meeting each other face to face. 23-year-old Joanne DePaz and 29-year-old Daisy Link, both imprisoned for separate murder charges, started talking to each other through the air vents before falling in love and eventually wanting kids. Using a makeshift line made out of bedding, they passed Joanne's erectoplasm through the vents, while Daisy used a yeast infection applicator to inseminate herself. Against all odds, the plan worked, and the baby was born healthy. The pair are now in different prisons, while Joanne's mother is raising their baby girl. In 2003, a woman found a painting in the trash on a New York City curb. She felt it had power, so she took it home without knowing anything about its value or origin. After holding on to it for 4 years, she eventually discovered that it was a very valuable Mexican painting that was stolen in 1987. So she contacted authorities and received a $15,000 reward plus a percentage of its sale price of over $1 million. In August of 2010, a 13-year-old British teenager was struck by lightning at 1313 on Friday the 13th. He was the only one struck amongst a crowd of 150,000 people who were watching an air show. In 2014, a 39-year-old Brazilian woman named Adriana wanted to find her mother who abandoned her as a baby. So she went on a TV show and ended up finding her mom through the power of the internet. The two had an emotional reunion, but her mother revealed that she had also abandoned Adriana's infant brother, Leandro. In a bizarre twist, Adriana's husband turned out to be her brother, Leandro. But despite the pair being siblings, they vowed to never separate. In 1987, a British woman purchased a ring from a flea market for $5, thinking it was simply a nice-looking artificial stone. But 33 years later, she discovered that it was actually a genuine 26-carat diamond ring worth $960,000. During the Crimean War over 160 years ago, a French and Russian soldier fired at each other and their bullets miraculously collided. The series Breaking Bad has 62 episodes in total. The 62nd element on the periodic table is samarium, a substance typically used to treat lung cancer. One of the most renowned vasectomy doctors in all of Texas is named Dr. Dick Chop. Packers fan Jim Becker regularly donated blood in order to afford tickets for games. Years later, he found out that he had a potentially deadly disease that could only be prevented through giving blood. So without even knowing it, he was saving his own life by donating blood the entire time. The most siblings born on the same day but on different years is 5. Catherine, Carol, Charles, Claudia, and Cecilia Cummins were all born on February 20th. The odds of this happening are about 17 billion to 1. In 2007, the Coble family lost their 2 girls and 1 boy in a horrific car crash. But a year later, the mother gave birth to triplets, 2 girls and 1 boy. Mark Twain was born in 1835, shortly after Halley's Comet was passing by Earth. In 1909, he would later say, "I came in with Halley's Comet and I expect to go out with it." He died on the exact day the comet appeared in 1910. In 1957, a woman attending an MLB game was hit with a foul ball that broke her nose. The game was briefly paused, then resumed once the woman was put on a stretcher. But as they carried her away, the next pitch was fouled off and hit the same woman, breaking a bone in her knee. Built during the reign of King Louis XVI in 1774, the Writing Boy was the first automatic android ever created. It was hand-built by Swiss watchmaker Pierre-Jacques Dreux and was designed to mimic the act of someone writing with incredible precision. A milestone in the history of robotics and engineering, the android is comprised of 6,000 moving parts that took more than 20 months to put together. The Sidarium of St. Veronica is an engraving made by French artist Claude Milan in 1649. It was created from a single spiraling unbroken line that starts at the tip of Jesus' nose. Discovered in 1972, this 8-inch long deuce was dropped by a Viking around the 8th century. Weighing in at just under 5 corics, it's the largest fossilized human turd ever found and has provided valuable insights into the dietary practices of ancient Vikings. In 2013, an ancient tree at an archaeological site in Romania was uprooted during a thunderstorm. Beneath the tree, the site's caretaker discovered an ancient bronze matrix that was used as a mold to craft jewelry for the Dacian civilization over 2,000 years ago. Just last year, Irish farmer Michael Boyle found this 50-pound chunk of bog butter on his property after digging up something that reeked of cheese. Ancient farmers would often bury these large chunks of animal fat in bogs for preservation. Despite it dating all the way back to the Bronze Age, Boyle says it still tastes like butter. In 2022, a badger burrowing into a cave in Spain accidentally dug up the largest collection of Roman coins ever found in the region. A local man was walking outside the cave and noticed nearly 100 coins randomly scattered on the ground next to a burrow. So he alerted archaeologists, who eventually found over 100 more ancient coins inside. Most of them date back to 300 AD and were likely hidden there by refugees over 1,700 years ago. This apartment in Istanbul has renovations from 3 empires and 1 republic that ruled over the city at different times, all being built on top of each other. In 2016, Spanish man Juan Francisco was making some renovations in his home that resulted in a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Behind the first wall he removed, he found the facade of a Renaissance-era hospital that was built in the 16th century. Juan immediately alerted archaeologists, who told him it once belonged to St. George's Hospital, a long-forgotten masterpiece by famed Spanish architect Andrés de Vandel Vera. The structure is more than 30 feet tall and covers several floors of Juan's home. It's unclear as to why such an incredible work was hidden behind the wall of someone's home, but it had likely been that way for centuries. In 2014, the incredibly preserved photograph of a young woman was found in the wreckage of the SS Central America, which sunk during a hurricane in 1857. The woman's identity is unknown, but the photo has been dubbed the Mona Lisa of the deep. This is the earliest known depiction of Jesus Christ, scratched into a wall around 200 AD by someone who gave him a donkey's head to mock their friend for believing in Jesus. This is the only surviving handwriting of an ancient Roman emperor. It was written by Theodosius II around 430 AD and reads in Latin, "We desire that you be well." This is the only ancient Roman slave tag discovered that's still attached to its collar. Its inscription reads, "I have fled, seize me and return me to Xeninus for 1 gold coin." Here's a pictograph found at Barrier Canyon in the Utah desert depicting a humanoid with bug eyes and antennae. It's at least 2,500 years old. This is the only surviving example of a Ghiornia from the 15th century. This garb was a staple of Italian fashion in the 1400s, with this one belonging to Diego Cavaniglia, who died in 1481. Before it was found near his tomb in 2004, we only knew of gonorrheas through paintings and written records. Talented artist Norman Lee worked for Marvel Comics for nearly 20 years until he suddenly disappeared in 2015. He was snorkeling in the Cayman Islands with his wife but never returned ashore, and his body was never found. In 1974, a group of 6 men entered the hi-fi audio store in Utah and held everyone inside hostage. The hostages were then subjected to brutal torture, including being forced to drink drain cleaner, which left them with horrible burns in their throats and mouths. One of the victims had a ballpoint pen inserted into his ear that was stomped on until it punctured his eardrum and came out his throat. All 5 hostages were later shot in the head, 3 of whom died. 2 of the perpetrators were sentenced to death, while the 3 other men involved were never caught. The lower left side of Sylvester Stallone's face is paralyzed due to a nerve being accidentally severed by doctors during his birth, which is what gave him his iconic slurred speech and snarling look. As a result, Stallone suffered a lot of bullying as a child, which is what ultimately got him into bodybuilding. Bill Wilson, one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, begged his nurse for some whiskey while on his deathbed, but she refused, and he died 36 years sober. Ugandan mother Miriam Babiri was sold into child marriage to a violent 45-year-old man when she was only 12 years old. A year later, she became a mother with twins, followed by triplets the next year. 19 months afterwards, she gave birth to a set of quadruplets when she was only 16 years old and simply never stopped having kids. She's birthed 44 children to date, 38 of whom are still alive. But sadly, she is now a single mother, since her husband abandoned her in 2015 to avoid the responsibility of supporting so many kids. 1981, Johnny Cash got into a fight with an ostrich at his exotic animals refuge near his Tennessee home. The incident left Cash with multiple broken ribs and a deep stomach wound that nearly killed him. As a result of the pain pills he was prescribed, he slipped back into a drug addiction years after overcoming them. When Congressman Charlie Wilson was 13, his neighbor Chuck Hazard poisoned his dog by mixing glass into its food. Years later, when Hazard was running for office, Wilson drove 96 people to the polls by telling them how Hazard had killed his dog. Hazard ended up losing by 16 votes. Martha Stewart once dated Anthony Hopkins but broke it off with him after watching The Silence of the Lambs. She says she couldn't separate Hopkins from his cannibalistic character, Hannibal Lecter. RFK's assassin, Sirhan Sirhan, is still alive today and has been denied parole 17 times. According to historians, we would have a lot more Egyptian mummies intact today if so many of them weren't eaten during the Victorian era. People used to believe that the ground-up corpses of ancient Egyptians could cure different ailments. Harvey Weinstein reportedly had gangrene around his private area, giving his shaft a Frankenstein look that appeared as if it was chopped off and sewn back on. His ghoulies were also removed during treatment of his gangrene. When Roman Emperor Commodus was in power, he had his men gather all the dwarves and disabled people they could find around the city. They were brought to the Colosseum, where each of them was given a meat cleaver and forced to fight to the death. Within seconds of the band Great White taking the stage at the Station Nightclub in 2003, faulty pyrotechnics ignited the flammable acoustic foam that surrounded the stage. Far exceeding the building's capacity, all 462 people quickly flooded the exits as the entire building was rapidly engulfed in flames. But many struggled to find the exits due to the heavy smoke, leading to a pileup at the front entrance that prevented anyone else from escaping. Multiple survivors also claimed that 2 bouncers blocked the stage door as fans attempted to escape the building, telling them that the door was only to be used by the band. In the end, 100 people lost their lives, including Great White's guitarist Ty Longley. One man named Mike Vargas managed to survive for 90 minutes inside the building. He was trampled by a mob trying to escape and only survived because he was insulated by all the bodies burning around him. He walked out with only minor burns but still suffers from severe PTSD. JFK's older brother Joseph most likely would have been the presidential candidate instead, but was killed in a top-secret flying mission during World War II. John once said that he never would have gotten into politics if his brother Joe had survived. In 2014, a Jamaican phone scammer threatened to kill a retired American man named William Webster when he wouldn't fall for his scam. But the scammer didn't know that Webster was the former director of both the FBI and the CIA. When he flew to New York City in 2017, he was immediately arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison. In 1740, Ivan VI became Emperor of Russia when he was only 2 months old following the death of his Empress mother. Just 1 year into his reign, the baby was overthrown by his cousin and sent to prison. He spent the next 20 years of his life in solitary confinement without any of the guards knowing his true identity, before eventually being killed in a failed rescue attempt, as was the plan if he ever tried to escape. Right after purchasing some hot coffee from McDonald's in 2004, 79-year-old Stella Liebeck accidentally spilled it into her lap, causing horrific third-degree burns. The woman quickly went into shock and was hospitalized for 8 days while undergoing skin grafts. Since the burns were so bad, her lady parts had melted and fused to her legs. Stella suffered permanent disfigurement after the incident and was partially disabled for 2 years. She then sued McDonald's for making the coffee way too hot and was only seeking $20,000 to cover her medical bills. But McDonald's refused to settle with Stella as the media completely demonized her, calling her the poster child of frivolous lawsuits. However, people quickly changed their tune when photos of the horrific burns finally released. With one of the jurors being so traumatized, he forced his wife to quit drinking hot coffee. Stella ended up winning $2.9 million in damages from the lawsuit, but her life was never the same again. In 1991, 11-year-old California girl Jaycee Dugard was abducted by convicted sex offender Philip Garrido while waiting for her school bus. Garrido kept Jaycee handcuffed in various tents and sheds that he built in his backyard where he would consistently abuse her. 7 months into her captivity, Garrido introduced Jaycee to his wife Nancy, who brought the child a stuffed animal and chocolate milk while tearfully apologizing to her, but did nothing to free her. Instead, she helped her husband manipulate the young girl, at one point giving her 2 kittens before later taking them away. Jaycee was eventually forced to bear a daughter at age 14 and another at 17, though she was never allowed to see a doctor. She remained missing for 18 years until a parole officer finally discovered her while investigating Garrido. He was sentenced to 431 years in prison, while his wife received 36 years to life. The state of California eventually awarded the Dugard family $20 million for its mishandling of the case. Here's a 2021 photo of Alec Baldwin breaking down in tears after firing a prop gun that killed the director of photography on the movie set of Rust. The tragic incident happened as a result of catastrophic failures in safety procedures on the set. The woman who was responsible for checking the firearms was only 24 years old and had very little experience in her role. Rust was her second film as lead armorer, since she had previously worked on another Western film called The Old Way, where she received multiple safety complaints from the cast and crew. She also admitted on a podcast that she felt overwhelmed and underprepared for her job on Rust. The live round that killed Helena Hutchins and injured Joel Souza was not supposed to be on the set at all. The production had a very strict rule that banned any live ammunition on the premises, and only blanks or dummy rounds could be used. But it was later revealed that some of the crew members used the same guns for target practice with live rounds during their off hours, and had failed to properly clean and inspect the weapons before returning them to the armory. RFK Jr.'s gravelly speaking voice is caused by a rare neurological condition he developed in his early 40s called spasmodic dysphonia, which causes the muscles that open and close the vocal cords to spasm involuntarily. Here's what he used to sound like before this condition versus after.
And if somebody dumps something into the river that's poison, and it goes into a drinking water intake, and children drink that drinking water, that is child abuse. I think those vaccines we need to have, again, true double-blind placebo-controlled trials on that. There's 25% of Americans.
While the true cause is unknown, people who do a lot of public speaking are far more likely to develop this condition. RFK required a titanium bridge in his vocal folds to be able to speak at all, and receives Botox shots in his vocal cords every 4 months. He says it's painful to hear himself speak and feels sorry for those who have to listen to him. DJ Khaled used to go by the stage name Arab Attack, but decided to change it after 9/11. In 1983, a 23-year-old British woman died after eating what's still considered to be the largest meal ever consumed. She ate 19 pounds of various foods within a 4-hour span before her stomach gave out. She had a sad history of bulimia and purging, as she likely planned on puking it all up but failed. In July of 1945, a girls' dance camp in New Mexico woke up to a forceful boom followed by strange white powder falling from the sky. The girls called it Winter in July and caught what they thought were snowflakes on their tongues. No one alerted anyone in the area that the first atomic bomb had just been tested 50 miles away, and the snowflakes were deadly radioactive fallout. 10 of those 12 girls ended up dying before the age of 40. Throughout most of his life, Kurt struggled with chronic bronchitis and intense pain from an undiagnosed stomach condition, resulting in a turbulent spiral of drug addictions and mental health problems. Cobain's mental health was a roller coaster as he suffered from depression, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and crippling anxiety. After he bought his LA mansion, Kurt reportedly preferred to hang out in his walk-in closet because the large space of the rest of the house made him anxious. He also suffered from severe body dysmorphia as he never felt comfortable in his own skin. He was insecure about his small frame and often wore multiple layers or baggy clothing to hide it. For this reason, he was reportedly wearing 3 pairs of pants when his body was found.